Alright guys, here's a video for your homework, just in case you're stuck. Number one, you want to solve that inequality. It's like solving an equation. Let's get x by itself on one side. So in order to get rid of that minus 6, you have to do the opposite, plus 6. What you do to one side, you must do to the other, plus 6. Rewrite everything, right? The 6 and the negative 6 cancel out. You now have a 8x, a greater than or equal to, and also a 16. 10 plus 6 is 16. So what you truly have is 8 times x. So to get rid of that multiplication of 8 in front of the x, you'd have to do the opposite of multiplication, which is division of that 8. The 8 cancels. Your final answer is x is greater than or equal to 2. Now remember, the only difference between solving equations and inequalities is if you multiply or divide by a negative on your final step, you have to flip the inequality symbol. Right here we divided by a positive 8. That's why we didn't have to flip this symbol. It stayed exactly the same. Now what does this mean? Well, remember, if it opens up towards this, that means that this is greater than that, right? Think of the hungry alligator. It always wants to eat the greater value. So x is greater than or equal to 2. So we want to represent x's on this number line. And here is the 2. Now the question is, do we do a solid dot or an open dot? Well, if there's a solid line underneath it, it has to be a solid dot. If there's no solid line underneath it, it's going to be an open dot, right? So because it says greater than or equal to 2, that means that it could be greater than 2 or equal to 2. So that's why it's a solid dot. So you put a solid dot, and greater than is this way. That's it. Let's move on to the next one. Number 3. We're going to add 16 first. Add 16. New equation or new inequality is negative 8r is greater than or equal to 16, right? 0 plus 16 is 16. Final step would be to get rid of that multiplication of negative 8 by dividing by negative 8, which do to one side, do to the other, divided by negative 8. You do have r by itself, but remember, since we divided by a negative, we need to flip that inequality symbol. The greater than or equal to became less than or equal to. And 16 divided by negative 8 is negative 2. So you go to the negative 2, and again it's or equal to, there's a solid line, so you're going to have to put a solid dot at the negative 2. And less than is to the left. Again, less is to the left. Greater is to the right. That's right. I said great. So make that a little nicer. Well, that's kind of ugly. Well, you know what I'm trying to do here. Let's move on to the next one, number 5. You want to solve this inequality. Let's treat it like if it were an equation. Let's get x by itself on one side. Let's subtract 6x. Subtract 6x. 9x, take away 6x is 3x. Bring down everything else. The minus sign comes down. The 11 comes down. The inequality even comes down. And also the minus 9, that comes down. So there's our new inequality. Now we need to solve it, continue solving it. So I'm going to get rid of the 11 by adding 11 to both sides. So this cancels out. What do I have left? I have a 3x greater than symbol and negative 9. We get 2 on the other side right here. So then we have to divide by 3 to get rid of the 3. And what do we have? We have the answer. Let me write it right here. X is greater than 2/3. Okay. Now, it's an open dot at 2/3, but what we need to do is understand fractions before we actually graph it, right? So the denominator will tell you how many pieces to chop up the unit, right? So this is saying chop it up into 3 equal pieces and go to the second piece. So 2/3 is obviously less than 1, but greater than 0. So it's kind of like if I had, let me just do this with tiny blue dots. So say 1/3, 2/3, 3/3, right? Because 3/3 is equal to 1. So once again, here's 1/3, here's 2/3, here's 3/3. So 1/3 is definitely less than halfway. 2/3 is definitely greater than halfway. So we want to represent the 2/3 location. X is greater than 2/3. It's going to be an open dot at 2/3. So I'm going to put an open dot right there. And because it's greater than, it's going to be going to the right. Moving on. Let's go to the next one, number 7. Let's get u by itself on one side. I'm going to move the, I've been moving the variables to the left. This time I'm going to move it to the right just to show you what you must do at the end in case you do move the variable to the right. So you want the variable on the left, but let's just say that you decided to go plus 8u plus 8u. 13 plus 8 is 11, and we are talking about u's. Of course, we're going to rewrite everything. The minus 10 comes down, the symbol comes down, and this 1 over here, it's going to come down, just regular 1. So there's your new inequality. The u is on the right side. Let's get u by itself. Well, let's get rid of that minus 10 by adding 10. Adding 10, we're going to have 11 is less than or equal to 11u. That's pretty nice, because when we get rid of this 11 that's being multiplied by u, and we're getting rid of the multiplication of 11 by dividing by 11, we end up with a nice, beautiful answer. So our u is on this side. We didn't divide by a negative, so the inequality does not flip. Okay. Again, this is dividing by 11, not negative 11. So this stays exactly the same, doesn't flip. So this is our answer. However, on the answers, you don't want to be talking about 1, you want to be talking about u. So right here it says 1 is less than or equal to u. But I don't want to talk about 1, I want to talk about u. So I want u on this side, and I want 1 on this side. So what we're going to do is we're going to take both of these and just going to flip the whole thing. Now when we flip the whole thing, we have the u on the left side and the 1 on the right side. Now this is the correct answer, so we need to keep the same respect. Now what am I talking about when I say same respect? If this is opening up to the u, it has to continue to open up to the u. So obviously if you took the whole thing and flipped it, you're going to have to take that inequality and flip it as well. So if it was opening up to the u in the first place, then it has to continue opening up to the u. So this is the way better answer. And as a matter of fact, you need it in this form to really make sense of the graph, all right, when you graph things. So make sure that you don't leave it like this, okay? So don't do it like that, even though that is correct, okay? But when we graph, now we can think, okay, we want to represent all the u's on the number line. So it is going to be a solid dot because it has a solid line underneath it. So let's put a solid dot at 1. And it is greater than, because greater than symbol, and greater than is to the right. So it's going that way. Let's move on. Oh yeah, get into some fun stuff here. Requires a simplification, which is like distributive property and combining like terms. I like it. Anyway, 9 times 2r, that's 18r. 9 times negative 5, that's negative 45. And the minus 3 at the very end, that just comes down. So if you haven't figured it out, I am simplifying the left side of the inequality right now. I've distributed, now I'm going to combine like terms. So I'm going to combine the negative 45 with the negative 3, that's going to give me a negative 48. And I am going to bring down the 18r. So far on the left side I have 18r minus 48, and that's all I could do on the left side. I can't subtract r's and numbers. So I have 18r's, I have minus 48, I can't do that, I leave it like that. Let me bring down the rest. I'm going to bring down the inequality, the less than symbol. I'm going to bring down the 7, the r, and the minus 4. So now we have a inequality with variables on two sides. Let's get the r's to one side. So I want to subtract 7r, they cancel. We end up with 11r, let me write that down, 11r, and let's bring down everything else. Minus 48 is less than negative 4. Let's get r by itself. Let's move the 48 over to the other side by doing the opposite of minus 48, which is plus 48 to both sides. We end up with 11r, because these guys cancel, is less than 44. And once again, it's going to work out beautifully, because 11r being less than 44, you need to get rid of that 11 that's being multiplied in front of the r. So we're going to divide by 11, and we end up with a nice, beautiful answer. R is, do we keep the sign or flip it? We keep it because we didn't divide by a negative. 44 divided by 11 is 4. So this says r is less than 4. So we're going to go to the number line. We're going to go to the value of 4. We're going to put an open dot because it does not have an or equal to. Okay, so r is less than 4. That means it could be 3, it could be 2, it could be 1, it could be negative 4, it could be negative 1,000. It could be even 3.5 or 3.9 or 3.99999, super close to 4, but it can't be 4. That's why we leave it as an open dot, because it's not or equal to. And to the left is less than, so that's our answer and our graph. Moving on. Whoops, almost skipped that one. Number 11. Let's get x by itself. How could we do that? By getting rid of everything. So right here we have a division of 2. If you don't want that division of 2, simply multiply by 2 and multiply by 2. So we will have a new inequality that reads 4x minus 3 is greater than or equal to 3.5 times 2 is 7. And of course that's a negative 7 because there's a negative sign in front. And let's get rid of that minus 3 by adding 3. Adding 3. I have a new inequality. 4x is greater than or equal to negative 4. Final step here would be to get rid of the multiplication of 4 in front by dividing by 4. Dividing by 4. X is less than, whoops, why am I flipping it? X is greater than, sorry about that, greater than or equal to negative 1, right? Why did I keep it the same? Because I did not divide by a negative. The only time you flip the inequality is if you multiply or divide by a negative on your last step. So this stays the same. So the answer is x is greater than or equal to 1. Negative 1, that is. So let's go to negative 1. Because it's or equal to, because it has a solid line underneath it, it's going to be a solid dot. Again, this solid line makes it solid. If it were just greater than, it'd be an open dot. And this is greater than, and greater than is to the right. So let's just draw an arrow this way, to the right. Moving on to number, here we go. Number 13, we're going to go negative 2. Notice that I circle and call it a negative 2 instead of a minus 2. It's easier. Negative 2 times w is negative 2w. Negative 2 times 77, I believe that's negative 154. Feel free to use a calculator if you'd like so you don't make mistakes. Let's bring down this minus 36. So we have distributed. After that, you try to combine the terms that are alike, combine like terms. And we could combine this number with this number. Now remember, we're not getting rid of things, we're just combining. So we're going to do this in our head, right? Negative 36, negative 154, that's going to be negative 190, I believe. And of course, use a calculator. So let me rewrite this whole thing. We have negative 2w minus 190. And the inequality, the greater than symbol over here, we're just going to take that guy. Wait, why am I circling it? That's a bad idea. Let's just take that inequality and bring it right down here, okay? It's still greater than. There's nothing else I could do on the left side. It's already simplified. Over here on the right side, we could simplify. So again, let's distribute first. Negative 4 times 2w, that's negative 8w. Negative 4 times 52, that is negative 208. Use a calculator so you don't make mistakes. Now let's get the w by itself on one side. So I'm going to go plus 8w, plus 8w. My new inequality reads positive 6w minus 190 is greater than negative 208. For my next step, I will add 190, and we will have 6w is greater than negative 18. Again, use the calculator to do negative 208 plus 190 if you're struggling with that. So let's get rid of the multiplication of 6 by dividing by 6, dividing by 6. And we did not divide by a negative, we divided by a positive 6, which means that the inequality symbol is going to stay exactly the same. The only time you flip it is if this number you're dividing by is negative. This is a positive 6, so we do not flip it. But the answer is negative 3. So this is our answer. W is greater than -3. So let's go to the number line. It's going to be an open dot. Greater than is to the right. Moving on. Number 14. Yeah. Let's distribute. -5 times n is -5n. -5 times -3 is +15. Let's bring down the 4n that's in front. Just bring it right down. So we have 3 terms now. And out of those 3 terms, we could combine the n's with the n's. So what is 4n take away 5n? That is a -1n. Let's bring down the +15. And there is nothing else to do on the left side of this inequality. I'm going to take the inequality symbol and just bring it down and rewrite it right there. Now let's simplify the right side. 3 times n, that's 3n. 3 times 1, that is 3. Bring down the -4 that's at the very end. And out of these 3 terms, we could combine, there are no n's with n's, but there is a number with a number that we could combine. Okay, so this is 3 minus 4. 3 minus 4 is -1. So what do I have left over on the right side? I have the 3n that we didn't do anything to, but the 3 minus 4 is -1. So there's our new inequality in blue with the greater than symbol separating the 2 sides. Now let's get the n by itself on one side. So I am going to move the 3n over to the other side by doing the opposite of 3n, which is -3n. What you do to one side, you do to the other side. Right here it canceled out. Over here on the left side, it becomes -4n. Let's bring down the +15, bring down the greater than, the -1. There's your new inequality. Let's continue solving. I'm going to get rid of the 15 by subtracting 15, subtracting 15. We have -4n is greater than -16. Final step will be to get rid of the multiplication of -4 in front of the n by doing the opposite, dividing by that same value, -4. Now, at this point, when you heard the words dividing by a negative, there should be some bells in your head going off saying, hey, wait a minute, I'm going to have to flip that inequality symbol because I'm dividing by a negative on my last step. So when you rewrite your answer, it's going to be n is less than -16 divided by -4 is +4. N is less than +4. It's a lot of work, but it's fun. So let's go to the +4. It's going to be open dot or a solid dot right here. Obviously, if there's no solid line underneath it, it's not going to be a solid dot. It's going to be open. So we have an open dot at 4, and less than is to the left. Greater than is to the right. Moving on. Oh man, just some word problems left. Number 15, 20 less than a number is more than twice the same number. Oh yeah, 20 less than a number. Okay, so a lot of people know that less than means subtraction, right? But if you're confused with this, like 20 is less than a number. Okay, how about this? Let's do something realistic that we could all relate to. If I said, what is 2 less than your age? Or even, 2 less than your age. Are you going to say 2 minus your age? 15, 16? 2 take away 16? No. 2 less than your age implies that you put your age first and the 2 second. So the less than implies a switch. So even though we know it's minus, you need to remember to switch the order of what you're doing here. Okay. Oh yeah, and also to not confuse you, if it were to have said is less than, then it would be a less than symbol. But it doesn't have the word is. Okay, the word is the inequality, but there is no is. So right here, the less than actually means subtraction. So 20 less than a number. Again, imagine 2 less than your age. You're going to put your age, take away 2. That's what you do. The less than implies a switch. So a number, we don't know that number. We're going to call it x, right? And so here's the minus sign. And we're going to put the x first. And the 20 we're going to put second. Okay, now here is the is that we were talking about. Is more than. Okay, so is more than. What does is more than mean? More than. Okay. Now it doesn't say is more than or equal to. It just says is more than, is greater than. And over here on the other side, it says twice that same number. So twice is multiplying by 2, right? If I say what's twice your age, you're not going to add 2. You're going to take your age and multiply it by 2. So twice that same number would be to multiply 2 times the same number that we were talking about. And what's that number? It's x. So twice that same number. So there's your inequality. Okay, x minus 20 is less than 2x. and I believe they want us to solve it as well. So they want you to create the equation. And by the way, you didn't have to use x's. You could have used different variables like n's or v's or whatever. But I like x's. I believe on the answer key they use n's. But let's solve this thing. And I don't really have any space, but let me do this. There it is, rewritten on the side. Now we have space. So let's get x by itself on one side. I'm going to get rid of this x. It's going to cancel. 2x take away 1x is 1x. Bring down the inequality. Bring down the minus 20. Now remember, we want the x on the left side because right here it says negative 20 is greater than x. But we would like to be talking about the variable x on the left side. So if we put the x over here and the minus 20 over there, if we took the entire thing and flipped it, we have to take that symbol and flip it. Because if it's opening up to the negative 20 here, it has to open up to the negative 20 over here. So let's do that. There's your final inequality answer for number 15. And I think we're just going to skip number 17 since this video is already way too long. Whoops. Remember, all these questions that come out on the homework could come out on the test or quiz.